At the heart of the Jewish tradition, the heart of the Hebraic understanding of the human person, the human soul, and the human condition, is a realization that human beings can be both very low and very high, that we are capable of terrible deeds, terrible thoughts, evil actions, but we are also beings made in the image of God, capable of the highest possibilities in the most sacred things. Well, as we turn to the third chapter of the Ethics of the Fathers, this twin vision of the human person, the realism and the hopefulness of the Hebraic understanding of human life, is set up quite brilliantly and quite lucidly. The early section sets down the realistic vision of who we are. It says, "Know from where you came, where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give a judgment." Well, from where we came, it says, is a putrid drop. What a sad, low image of our origins. Where we're going is to a place of dust. What a dark understanding of our destiny as mortals. And yet it asks us to say, before whom you are destined to give a judgment. Now, judgment, the thought of being judged, is probably awe-inspiring, fear-inspiring, terror-inspiring. And yet it is, even in this realistic beginning about who we are as people, the Jewish tradition says we're the kind of beings worthy of being judged, worthy of being known by the Almighty, worthy of having been created in the first place. Hard realism, but even in the very beginning, those little intuitions of Jewish hope. That moves on to give us a second realistic account of the kind of beings we are in society, the kind of social beings that we are. And it says, we need to pray for the integrity of the government, for were not for the fear of its authority, a man would swallow his neighbor alive. What a dark image of human life, that we're the kind of beings that can attack each other, that engage in war, rivalry, fighting, that we can swallow each other alive like social cannibals. What a dark, terrible way to think about the human being. And yet even here too, it gives us a sense of hope, that we are the kind of beings that can form governments of some integrity and respect their authority. We begin in realism. The human situation is problematic. We are dust, we are mortal, we are flesh, we are capable of acting like animals in the lowest sense. Yet, even from the very beginning, there is that dove of hope, that intuition that we are beings that God wants to be good. And the rest of this chapter takes us through different ways of understanding how we become good, how we acquire wisdom, what we are capable of being at our best, always aware of our tendency toward sin. The images and ideas that it sets forth in this middle march through the text are quite inviting and quite telling. It moves to thinking about us as being capable of conversation. Now, God-fearing conversation is good. It shows us that we're the kind of people that can share in holiness with one another, that can explore and discuss and seek together the truth of our existence through conversation. Conversation being that arena that separates us from the other animals, for we are the only beings that can converse. But here too, it reminds us that conversation can be a temptation to danger, that it can be conversation about low things, conversation that distracts us from Torah, conversation that leads us astray. It leads us to how we are known as sanctified beings in different kinds of community. So it gives us in a later section this image of our holiness, whether we're gathered in a group of 10, a group of 5, a group of 2, or as individuals. Well, the group of 10, that's the number of community. That's the number of a people having to come together seeking holiness as a group in prayer and in study. 5 is a band, a smaller group, a group brought together perhaps for a more singular defined purpose. 2 is the number of conversation, the number of love, the number of marriage. And the individual is where we always begin and where we always end. In birth and in death, we come into being and we exit life as individual souls. And we live a kind of existentialist existence, always seeking God in community with others, but always with a divine drama that centers on our individual soul. It takes us through this quest for wisdom and what wisdom is, Wisdom requires a sense of being judged by our deeds. It requires us to remember that we are capable of sin. It requires us to be aware of what it means to live well with others. The text, I believe, is an ascent of the human soul, beginning with us as imagined as the dust of the earth, the maggots, the mortal beings that will end in nothingness, the cannibals who are capable of swallowing each other, but holding out hope that we can become what we are meant to become, what we are destined to become, the God-seeking, God-fearing beings who learn Torah and try to live up to its revelation and its maxims. And I believe the text ends, chapter 3, ends on a very, very high note. In the 15th section, it says, all is foreseen and freedom of choice is granted. The world is judged with goodness, but in accordance with the amount of man's positive deeds. What is it saying? We're not mere animals, mere things, mere mechanisms programmed to a certain dark destiny. We are embodied souls and ensouled bodies capable of choice, capable of learning the good and seeking to live up to it, capable of shaping our destiny in freedom. And that is ultimately how will we be known and be judged by the Almighty. And that judgment, it says in the next section, is a judgment of truth, and ultimately all is prepared for the feast. See, I think in the end, what separates the Hebraic tradition from its Greek rival is that the Hebraic tradition is starkly aware of how low human beings can be. It's not without its sense of the tragic dimensions of human life. But the biblical story is ultimately a hopeful story. It is not a dark tale, a recurrence of the same ending in death and tragedy. It is a tale with many twists and turns, with much sinfulness, much forgetfulness, much waywardness. But it is a tale where human beings, and especially God's chosen and beloved people, are always summoned back to know the Almighty in truth. And it ends in a providential feast. I think that's the divine drama that we're a part of. I think that's the deeper meaning of Jewish history, this ascent from our lowness to the heights of possibility. And I think that's the drama of every human life, as we try to chart a course of goodness, knowing always that we are imperfect beings, yet imperfect beings capable of conversation, capable of Torah study, capable of self-government, capable of choosing in freedom what kind of beings we will become. That, I think, is the enduring teaching of the ethics of the fathers, captured so powerfully in this third chapter. Know from where you came, where you are going, and before whom you are destined to give judgment. For because if we remember how low we can be, we can also discover the heights to which we can reach through God's helpful and revealed hand.